Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Metropolis Radio, and I don't know if you know this, but legacy sequels have been a thing for quite a while. And judging from the success of Halloween 2018, bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis, Top Gun Maverick, bringing back Tom Cruise, this article from the Hollywood Reporter pretty much sums it up right here, is that a new golden age emerges for OG film stars. Yes, IP matters a ton, but studios are listening to fandoms and realizing that without the actors who embodied those original characters, they're holding on to diminished properties. And before I actually get into the article, I have to bring up this, they're calling it an illustration. I'm calling it a meme. It's actually very funny. I'm going to splash up on the screen right now. That is, coming to a theater near you. Everyone from everything you used to love all at once forever. Personally, I find this extremely funny, given that Indiana Jones 5 is coming out. I just brought up Halloween, Top Gun. Pretty much. That's pretty much all. And let's get into this. A new normal has descended on Hollywood as studios keep mining their intellectual property archives, tap into the huge goldmine nostalgia can provide at the box office by going back and casting original franchise actors in an umpteenth sequel or reboot. Look no farther than the success of Sony and Marvel's Spider-Man No Way Home, which features prior Spidey stars Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, along current Spider-Man Tom Holland, or Paramount's Tom Cruise sequel Top Gun Maverick. Quote, toying with legacy characters can be a fantastic weapon and is shorthand with the audience. It invokes a love for the original and sort of promises that it will carry over into this version of it, says Michael Ireland, who is co-president of Paramount's Motion Picture Group, alongside Darius Sursek. Quote, authenticity is the real McCoy. The choices are so vast now from a content perspective. At Sony Motion Picture Group President Sanford Panich, why do you want to see a redo when you can see the real thing? Notes a rival executive, quote, Spider-Man No Way Home proved the power and scale of this, and no, that rival exec isn't from Warner Brothers, now readying DC's The Flash, another multiverse superhero pick that is bringing back both Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck as Batman. Next up, though, is Universal and Amblin's Jurassic World Dominion. So by the time this video releases, Jurassic World Dominion would have been released for at least 2 weekends at this point. The latest installment in the franchise, which opens June 10th in the US, sees Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Sam Neill, and B.D. Wong reunite for the first time since they appeared in Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park. They join Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, who have anchored filmmaker Colin Trevorrow's newer Jurassic World trilogy. Trevorrow, who works closely with Spielberg, succeeded in uniting new and old. Quote, it's obvious that if you can combine the nostalgia and the new, you stand a chance of growing your audience, says Universal Marketing Chief Michael Moses. One could argue that Universal had to ensure the roar stayed strong. Jurassic World was a mega success, grossing $653 million domestically and $1.67 billion globally. While 2018's Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom joined the $1 billion club, it was down notably from the 2015 film, particularly in the US, $417.7 million versus $653.4 million. Disney's 2015 reboot of the Star Wars franchise, The Force Awakens, which brought back Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, and Harrison Ford, helped set the template to follow, but it was Universal and Blumhouse's Halloween 2018, which returned Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, that accelerated the trend with ferocity. The horror pick grossed $255.6 million worldwide against a budget of less than $15 million. And I will make note of this. I don't believe this article ever brings up Cobra Kai, but to be fair, Cobra Kai is a TV show. It's not a movie. This is just talking about movies. Its follow-up, Halloween Kills, released in October of 2021 amid COVID, did quite nicely. Consider it was a day-and-date release. It was a day-and-date release on Peacock, grossing $92.1 million domestically, nearly double Wonder Woman 1984's gross, and $131.6 million globally. The final title, Halloween Ends, opens in October of 2022. Quote, it has been the ride of my life to portray Laurie Strode since 1978, Curtis recently told theater owners at CinemaCon. But convincing Curtis to return to a franchise she'd grown frustrated with wasn't easy. Quote, When I first called Jamie's agent, they said, don't even bother. She's not going to do this ever again. Recalls Blumhouse founder and Uber producer Jason Blum, who partnered with Halloween rights holder Miramax on making a new trilogy. Blum succeeded in settling up a 15-minute meeting in settling up a 15-minute meeting with original Halloween filmmaker John Carpenter. Quote, he's famously very gruff and made no exception with me, Blum said, who stuck to his pitch and told Carpenter the movies would be made either way. This is Hollywood after all, so why not help? Carpenter, who was initially a no, changed his mind by the next day and said yes. Blum knew Carpenter would attract other top talent. David Gordon Green came aboard to direct and write the script with Danny McBride. Quote, I don't think David wanted to reinvent a movie that already existed when the original creator of that movie is around and somehow either against it is not involved, says Blum. When Curtis learned of Green and Carpenter's involvement, her resistance fell away, but she's made it abundantly clear that Halloween Ends is really the end. Quote, it's good that the tide has turned toward a reverence of the people who were originally responsible for these amazing movies, says Blum. Right? I think it's dumb to ignore them. Similar to Halloween, there have been umpteen titles in Wes Craven's Scream slasher franchise. Installments started trailing off at the box office, but this year, Spyglass and Paramount's Scream, Scream 5, a direct sequel to the first films, energized fans when packing the cast with legacy actors including Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, and David Arquette. Quote, I think it speaks to the exponential expansion of stories that are being told, whether across TV or film, says Sursek. The film did terrifyingly good business, grossing $140 million globally. As this story went to the press, Campbell announced on June 6, 2020, that she won't be returning to the next Scream installment over pay issues. The age of the OG is part of the quote-unquote requel era, whereby studios return to the source compared with doing a remake, reboot, or spin-off. Take Ghostbusters Afterlife. Following Paul Feig's 2016 reboot, the late Ivan Reitman proposed making a direct sequel to the first two films, both of which he directed, and having key actors including Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Sigourney Weaver reprise their roles. They made cameos in Feig's film, but as different characters. The new movie, directed by son Jason Reitman, earned nearly $200 million, a tidy sum considering the COVID-19 crisis. On the opposite spectrum are cautionary tales. Lucasfilm's origin spin-off film Solo: A Star Wars Story, starring Alden Ehrenreich as a young Han Solo, fell flat. And yes, I and many others still argue to this day that Han Solo did not need a fucking backstory. You know, so the Han Solo movie failed in two regards. The first regard was the fact that The Last Jedi basically came out and wanted to quote-unquote subvert everyone's expectations, and that pretty much went over like a lead balloon, so a lot of people probably decided, I'm going to sit out on Solo, and the other aspect was, it was a completely unnecessary movie because Han Solo is the kind of character that doesn't need a backstory. It's like going back and making an origin story for Clint Eastwood's character in A Fistful of Dollars for a few dollars more and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. We don't need to know Clint Eastwood's backstory to watch A Fistful of Dollars for a few dollars more or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. All we have to do, all you have to know is that he is just the stranger that strolls into town, solves the problem, and leaves as mysteriously as he arrived. Done. That's all there is to it. Han Solo was based on characters like Clint Eastwood, and in fact, you know, George Lucas has gone on record and actually said Boba Fett was more inspired by Clint Eastwood, and then they decided to make a whole series going into Boba Fett and how he survived the Sarlacc pit and how he became tough crime boss, when all of that was really unnecessary. You know, for some characters, less is more. For Han Solo, less is more. For Boba Fett, less is more. But anyway, I've tangented on for too long. The original Han Solo, Harrison Ford, was heralded as a conquering hero May 26th at Star Wars Celebration when turning up to promote Lucasfilm's Indiana Jones 5. He'll be on the verge of 81 when it comes out in June 2023. I remember when that movie was originally supposed to come out, I believe, in, was it 2018? Then it got pushed back into 2019, they got pushed back into 2020, and now it's been pushed back to 2023. I mean, hell, I thought Indiana Jones 5 was never going to frickin' happen. And sources say 20th Century Fox's Independence Day Resurgence, a sequel to the 1996 blockbuster, should have been scrapped once Will Smith made it clear he wanted no part of the follow-up, even while other legacy characters returned. Yes, I believe Brent Spiner returned. I believe Bill Paxton returned as the president, but did Jeff Goldblum come back? I don't know. I never saw Independence Day Resurgence, so I couldn't answer that. And here we go, to end off the article. And sometimes even having legacy characters doesn't mean a film will work. The Matrix Resurrections, headlining Keanu Reeves and other original stars, was quickly forgotten when opening late last year. Warns Ireland, quote, "You still have to tell a great story. You still have to give audiences something new and different. You have to build something." And this is one of the dangers of nostalgia. You know, you can bring back all of the original people that you want. You can bring back the entire original cast of the fucking Breakfast Club if you really wanted to, and make a direct sequel. But if there's no good reason to make a sequel to the Breakfast Club, everybody's going to write it off as unnecessary. Even if you brought back the entire original cast, and even was it John Landis that directed that? I don't know. I saw the Breakfast Club like one time, and I know some people are probably screaming at me in the comments that, duh, it of course was a John Landis movie. How do you not know the classic 1985 film with Emilio Estevez, Judd Nelson, and Molly Ringwald? Okay, it was John Hughes. Sorry, yeah, John Hughes. Didn't John Hughes pass away recently too? Yeah, John Hughes passed away back in 2009, but still, you know, you can bring back all of the surviving cast members of the Breakfast Club, and you could introduce their children, and you could have this direct sequel. But if there's no reason for the sequel, then everybody is still going to lambast it, no matter how many of these OG film stars you bring back. OG film stars, OG directors, OG writers. It doesn't freaking matter. If there's no point to the sequel or the requel, audiences are still going to reject it and call it unnecessary. And guys, I'm going to go ahead and end it right there before I start sounding like a broken record, which I probably already did at this point. If you stuck around this long, thanks so much for doing so. And if you've been following me along, I'm terrible at editing these videos, so I will just see you guys next time.